everyone! It's Alora from Game U, and welcome to part 1 of creating Sora's Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts in 12 steps. Step 1. Create the reference image plane in Blender. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to add our reference plane, or reference image, into our Blender file. So once I import it, it's going to be in the direction of the camera, so we're going to change it to be perfectly 90 degrees on the grid. I'm gonna add a cylinder first, because I think the easiest thing to start on would definitely be the Keyblade. So I'm gonna try to match the size. And here I'm just adjusting it just a little at a time. And I'm just gonna push the face back a little bit. I'm going to go in edit mode, grab these edges, use the move tool just to push it up a little bit. So in order to do this part here, we're gonna have to grab the face and extrude it out. You can also actually add a little bit of a bevel there. That way it's going in a little bit, and then we're gonna extrude that face. I'm just gonna go in wireframe mode just to check everything's straight. Gonna expand it just a little bit here, because it tapers more at the top. Just trying to get the perfect proportions here. You want it to kind of be circular and not oval. So for step 2, we're going to create the blade. We will use a cylinder and match it to our reference to get an accurate size. From this point, we will bevel and extrude the Keyblade until we match the image. So I'm increasing the size here, bringing it down, and then I'm extruding again. And then I'm going to make this smaller again. It's okay if it's not quite perfect, we're going to go back on these edges. Gonna put this closer to the reference image here, kind of shrink it. You can see how this looks when it's not in wireframe mode. It's starting to look pretty good. We're gonna grab these edges and do the same exact thing. We're just gonna extrude it out. Increase the size here. I'm gonna extrude it another time. And then scale it down. There we go. Now we're gonna turn off wireframe and go back and see. As we can see, some parts are a little bit off. So I'm gonna make some adjustments to get this right. Step 3. Create the Keyblade hilt. We will import a plane into Blender and cut out the plane to our image. we're gonna go to Mesh Plane. So we're gonna grab the knife tool. And I'm gonna get really close. And I'm just gonna start from right here. And I'm just gonna follow and trace the Keyblade as best as I can. And you don't have to worry about cutting the other side, because what we're going to do is we're just gonna mirror it. I'm gonna hit enter when I connect it all the way around. I'm gonna rotate. And now I'm just going to delete these extra faces. Extrude this part out here. We're just gonna delete the faces. And there we go. We have half of the hilt done. Now we just need to go back in object mode and bring it back over. And at this point we can mirror it. But you don't have to, because we still have to create one side to be fully detailed before we do the other side. I'm just doing it to fit the reference and get a general idea of our model so far. We can see we still have to create this back area here. I'm going to go back into edit mode. And select all these edges. And we're going to fill. And as you can see, it created some weird kind of broken topology. So I'm going to be deleting all these extra edges here that we do not need. Make sure you choose dissolve edges instead of delete edges. That way it doesn't break our model further. And you can do the same to this side too, but like I said later on, we're just going to duplicate just one side, so you don't have to worry about doing this part. It's looking pretty solid. They're not aligned with each other, so let's fix that. I'm going to turn on the reference to make sure that I'm aligning this properly. There we go. Now we're just going to have these come out. And that's about how thick it is. I'm just going to align it with our reference image here. And make this just a little smaller. So like I said, we don't have to get very detailed, we're just trying to get the scaling right and getting our basic shapes down. We are actually going to move on to step 3, and that's adjusting, adding bevels to the Keyblade and what we've done so far to give an overall smoother look. So we're just going to keep extruding and beveling and creating more parts of the Keyblade. We're just making small adjustments to the overall piece before we get into all the details. So now that we're continuing working on the hilt, I'm just going to really quickly add a cylinder mesh. And I'll edit this more later, but I'm just putting it where the grip is. Step 4. We're going to add in the bevels to the Keyblade hilt to give it an overall smoother look. I'm just going to duplicate our reference image just so I can see our reference while we model. And as you can see, we have some sharp edges, so we need to smooth those out a little bit. Get a bit more detailed. So I'm just gonna go with the bevel tool, and I'm gonna select the edges, and I'm just gonna bevel. Kind of add more curve instead of these harsh edges to our hilt. And to make sure to put a lot of bevels here, because this is actually a more circular part of the Keyblade. And you can see it kind of gave it a more smoother look. I'm just gonna dissolve the edge here, and I'm gonna bevel it. There we go. And we can compare both sides. We can see the right side has a bit more smooth edges. I'm also going to do the edges around the Keyblade. And always double check your work, because you may have some weird edges like I do here. Just go back in and delete. I'm going to try to bevel this again. There we go. Looks pretty good. So now I'm going to mirror this one because our other one is outdated at this point, and we don't have to redo the entire process again. So I'm just going to delete the lower poly. And then I'm going to mirror it on the local X. And I'm going to match it up with our reference here. Step 5. Creating the cylinders that make the middle of the hilt and connect it to the blade. We will also be using the same extruding and beveling we were doing beforehand. So here I'm going to be creating a material, and we're just going to do a shiny metal material. All I'm doing is adding a base color and then making the roughness completely to 0. I'm just going to add it to the other side. And we can see we're starting to get more accurate reference. And I'm going to do the same for the Keyblade. I'm just basically making my metal material by adding in the gray base color and then setting the roughness to 0. Right amount of gloss. Little too shiny. So we're going to up the roughness value a little bit, and that looks pretty good. And I know this Keyblade looks a little strange right now, but we'll fix this later when we finish modeling majority of the Keyblade. Then here I'm just adding the black material for his grip area. Just a little shiny, but not quite metallic. I'm gonna head back in edit mode and just adjust the Keyblade just a little bit and pull this down so I can connect the cylinder I'm about to make to it. We're going to use the same extruding and beveling method we've been using this entire time. So we're going to make this smaller. Just scaling it and slowly placing it in the right place from our reference image. And I'm just going to make this a little smaller, not as wide. I'm also going to grab the bottom here because it sort of tapers there at the bottom. So I'm going to make it a little wider. Then here I'm just going to grab this face. I'm going to extrude it upwards. Make it wider. Extrude it again. And then taper it down. And as we can see, our Keyblade is not even, so we're gonna have to go back and make it a little more even with everything else. Now it fits perfectly into our hilt. Then we're gonna do this bottom area. We're gonna go to edit mode, and we are going to taper it just a little bit more. Scale it out just a bit more. Then we're going to go back here, go to edit mode, grab this face, and we're going to extrude this a few times here. And change the size of each edge. Going to bevel it. And I'm gonna make this part just a little bit wider. Gonna bevel it again after extruding. And that looks pretty solid. And that looks good. So I'm just applying a smooth modifier. And I'm also subdividing. And that gives it more of a smoother look. And I'm going to keep adjusting different numbers. I'm trying different angles. There we go. I think that looks good. I set the angle to 180 for the smoothing. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to add a smoothing modifier, and I'm also going to add a subdivision modifier. And I'm just setting it to about the same settings. And you're just going to have to keep playing around with the numbers. It's going to be different for everybody. And just keep making it smoother and subdividing. I think that looks pretty solid. And now I'm gonna do the same process and make this cylinder. So I'm going to go back into add cylinder. And it's exactly how we did it on the top. That's connecting to the hilt and keyblade. We're gonna do down here, that's connecting the hilt to the Mickey Mouse keychain. So the exact same process. Add a cylinder, extrude, bevel, and then add the smooth and subdivision modifier. Now that I'm finishing lining it up, I'm going to go back into edit mode, select the face, and extrude. Or move it upwards. And then extrude. And we're going to go back and adjust those edges. So I'm going to take this and scale it downwards. There we go, have that match into our grip here. Gonna scale it outwards just to fit right into the grip. And we can see it's not perfectly centered, so we're gonna have to go back and adjust this. So now I'm just going back and I'm adjusting these edges here, changing the size. Just getting the base shape there. Then we're going to go back, bevel, and refine. So I'm actually going to pull the hilt down. Like so. I'm going to look inside. I don't want to have the grip going through. Step 6. Refine the Keyblade's edges and cylinders. It's always good to double check your model halfway to make sure everything's okay. So I'm going to go back into object mode, select the cylinder, adding the gold material, and as you can see it still has that strange kind of stripes, which I'm not a fan of, but we're going to go back and fix that after we finish extruding and beveling these last parts. Going to extrude this down. This comes out a little more. Like so. I'm going to add some edge loops. Here at the bottom. Going to push up and then extrude again. We're just going to extrude this. Pretty intricate detail here at the bottom. Make this smaller. And here at the bottom we do want to get a perfect circle. So now that we've got that perfect circle here at the bottom, we're gonna make this end part here that connects the chain to the Keyblade. So in order to do this, we're gonna have to keep extruding, shrinking, extruding, shrinking. And then on this edge, we are going to bevel. Just like that. Give it more of a rounded ending point there that's holding our chain. And now that we have majority of this done, I'm going to add some edge loops here for better topology. And before I subdivide it and smooth it, so I'm going to go back into object mode and I'm going to add my modifiers. And here what I'm doing is I'm actually taking these parts of the hilt and kind of meshing it into this bottom area. That way it's a little more seamless. So I've done one side. And check the back. And as you can see, the back's not done. So we're going to go up here and do the same thing. Just going to mesh this hilt into my cylinder here. So now that we finished step 6, we're going to go back to the cylinder and apply the 2 modifiers, the smoothing modifier and the subdivision modifier, and finish this last part of the hilt. So here I'm adding the smoothing and getting the right angle. And then after that I'm adding a subdivision modifier. And like I said, it's going to be different for everybody, so just kind of play around with the values and don't forget to save before you mess with the modifiers. We're just going to go back and add the edge loops, and that'll straighten it out and give it a more sharper look. Thank you guys for watching our video and following our steps. Part 2 of Sora's Keyblade is on our channel if you want to learn more and follow along with my tutorial. Please like and subscribe to this channel to follow more 3D modeling tutorials. I'll see you in the next video!